Hello, my name is Isabella Keller, and this is my cultural artifact assignment video. My cultural artifact is this doll right here from Czechoslovakia. It's very, very old. It's hand-painted face. It's very old clothes. Little cracks in it too because it's very old. Real delicate. My great-great-grandfather brought it over from Czechoslovakia years and years ago, before it was Czech Republic and Slovakia. My great-great-grandfather, a little backstory on the doll and my family and culture. My great-great-grandfather was an orphan in Czechoslovakia, and when he was like a preteen, he was adopted by a wealthy older man who was blind. And my great-great-grandfather was not only a son to this man, but also a guide. And as he got older, the older man who took him in would travel a lot, and so my great-great-grandfather would act as his guide when they traveled all over the world, like to Europe and Spain and just all over. And so that was an awesome experience for him to have, because he's going from such a low socioeconomic level to such a high one, to a privileged life. And that's just fascinating to me, how you can make such a jump. But my grandmother, great-great-grandmother, also lived in Czechoslovakia at the same time, but they did not know that. My great-great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather did not know each other. But as the years went on, they both got married, they both had kids, things happened, and there was falling outs on both ends. And I'm not sure the exact reason why my great-great-grandmother went to the United States, but I know that my great-great-grandfather came to the United States after his guardian passed away. And so he made the move here, and they soon met each other and became married and the children that they had from their previous marriages, there were 9 of them, and my nanny, who I was closest with, she was the youngest of the 9, and there's a few facts and details in this story that are a little foggy, because I know these stories from her, and she passed away 2 years ago to Alzheimer's and old age. She was 94, and she would always talk about it with me and my brother and I. So when my nanny was still living with my poppy, they had my grandma Shinko, who was my great-great-grandmother, live with them after my great-great-grandfather passed away. And she had this doll, and my nanny would always ask to have it and stuff, and it was like my great-great-grandmother's prized possession. And when she was before she passed away, she left it to my great-grandmother, who is my nanny. I know that's a little confusing, but so my great-great-grandmother, who received the doll from my great-great-grandfather, gave it to my great-grandmother. So it's like great-great-grandfather, he gave it to his wife as a gift, which I think is very sweet. And then she gave it to her daughter, who then passed it down to her daughter, and right now I am borrowing it from my grandmother. But she would always say that my great-great-grandmother would make the best strudel, like so good, and she'd make a bunch of different foods and homemade chicken noodle soup. And my grandmother told me that when she would make chicken noodle soup, that her and my grandmother and her brothers would look out the back window, and there her grandmother would be, my great-great-grandmother, her grandmother would be, and she'd chop the head off the chicken, and this chicken would just be running around, because you know how the saying is, like a chicken with its head cut off. Well, the nerves are still alive for a little bit after you cut the head off a chicken. So that's what my grandma always told me, that this chicken that she would use, it would literally run around the backyard and the kids would get a kick out of it. So I think that's kind of amusing in a sick way. But so she said that her chicken noodle soup was impeccable. So that's awesome. And they lived on a farm and everything, and the doll has just been passed down throughout the years. And I think that's pretty awesome. One more thing before I forget and end this video. My grandmother would always ask my nanny, "Oh, will you teach us how to speak Slovak?" And my nanny, like, she wouldn't mind. She'd teach them words and phrases here and there, but my poppy, who fought in the war, he did not want them to speak any other language other than the language of freedom, which was English. And so he did not want them to learn any other language. So my grandma cannot speak Slovakian, but she does know a few words and phrases. But this is my doll and my cultural artifact, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing and learning about the history of my culture and my family.